Hello everyone and welcome to my channel, and as part of Bad Sydney Crime Writers Festival, I'm at a bit of a Sydney institution, Abby's bookstore, and I happen to be in Crime Alley and I bumped into a crime writer, Mark Brandi. Hi Mark,
Stella.
and thanks for your time. Now Mark is the author of 3 novels and his most recent book is The Others. So can you give us a quick pitch of The Others?
Yeah, so the Others is the story of a young boy and his father who are living a very isolated existence out in the middle of the wilderness. And for his 11th birthday, the father gives the young boy Jacob a diary, ostensibly to record the goings on of the farm and day-to-day life. And it's through that form that the story is told. And as we see the narrative evolve, we see the goings on of the farm, but we also see that the father becomes more and more protective over his son and warns of dangers outside the land. But inevitably, Jacob's curiosity gets the better of him, and he then makes what is really a terrifying discovery, which makes him question everything that he's been told.
I just went to a session which talked about family secrets and the idea that crime is all about secrets.
Yeah, well, certainly my work does revolve around secrets. In Wimmera, certainly, there was a body in the bin, secreted away, and in The Others too. It's a different kind of dynamic because it's the father and the son, and the father is keeping something from the son, and that evolves really through the telling of the story. So I think that there's, definitely validity in the idea that the crime writing is about secrets.
Tell us a little bit about what sort of kid Jacob is. How old did you say he was?
He's 11 years old, which is sort of a magical age, I think, for narrators in fiction. And what I really like about that age is that he's on the cusp of adolescence and growing up, and there's just a natural curiosity which occurs at that age. You want to know more about the world. You start to challenge your parents and develop a bit of independent thought. And that really manifests for Jacob in the use of a dictionary that he has at hand and an encyclopedia, which are really the only books that he has. And so he's trying to figure out what's really going on. And I think for readers, they're kind of reading between the lines in a sense and reading a little bit beyond, because it's for adult readership, and so adult readers of course know a little bit more than a young boy might. And so I like that play of tension between a narrator and a reader. Not so much an unreliable narrator in the traditional sense, but one that's perhaps a little naive, let's say.
Yeah, I was saying earlier, I have just finished reading The Rip and I heard it in audio and it's excellent. There was a bit of that happening with your female protagonist there, that the reader knows more, even more so than other books.
Yeah.
And was that because of her youth as well? How old was she meant to be?
Yeah, I'll cast my mind back to the
17?
writing. It was a little bit older than that, probably early 20s, and she's from a fairly, I think, damaged background, it's safe to say, and she's grown up primarily in foster homes and then as a ward of the state. And, she's got a difficult social situation to deal with, and that's then compounded by issues of addiction as well. So, she's like, I really, of all my characters, she's one of my favourites. Like, I love the character of Dani, and I've got a real fondness for her.
Oh, didn't want to do a spoiler because you actually don't learn her name until the very end.
That name could be wrong. There could be a red herring, in fact, in there. I just made that up. But no, what I really like about her, especially, is that she's smart not perhaps in a traditional sense, but she's got a great deal of street smarts and a great deal of self-respect as well, and certainly doesn't want to be seen as a victim at any stage.
She does have, she's not, a saint, but she does have a social conscience, and but like you're saying, she has street smarts, but there's a naivety about her as well. As would there be any young person at the age of 20?
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
Yeah.
if we cast our own minds back to some of the stupid things we did in our late teens and early 20s, certainly I did. One of the big things I wanted to explore in the story was really the importance of, I suppose as a subtext of the story, the importance of safety nets in our community. And one thing that she doesn't have is many people to turn to in her life. She's got her best friend who she sleeps rough with. She's got her dog, Sunny. With the absence of a family, when things start to go wrong for her, they tend to snowball. And I think that, for some of us who live a fairly, I'd say, sheltered existence and have the support of others, lucky enough to have the support of family around us, things can go wrong for us. We can make bad decisions, but there's usually someone there to either pull us into line or bail us out of a situation. And I think for her, that just isn't there, and it isn't there for a lot of people in our community.
And this is a subject very close to my heart when men write women. How hard was it? Because I have to say there was not one time in that book where I kind of cringed and went, that's not true. To me it was, she's a totally believable character. So how did you write a 20-year-old woman? Where did you...
Yeah, that's a $1 million question. I suppose I didn't consciously draw from any particular people that I've known, but there's certainly people who I have known. It becomes a bit of a tapestry, I suppose, of different people who I've come across in my life, and both as friends and my professional life as well. And I think you just naturally tend to draw from whatever resources you've got when you're writing. I always felt like from the moment I started writing that story and she wakes up in the park, that first scene, which is the very first scene that I wrote, there was no doubt in my mind that it was a female protagonist, and it stayed that way all the way through. And it was on the back of my mind,
Don't get it wrong.
Yeah, don't get it wrong. Am I really biting off more than I can chew here? And I suppose I always thought that my readers, and particularly my publisher, my editor Vanessa Radnich, would tell me basically if I was missing a beat, or and certainly my partner, she's my first reader, so I relied on her to an extent. But no, she felt very real and true to me from the outset. So it wasn't a front of mind consideration.
But you do write young people then, which I'm sure has been pointed out to you before. Well, and you were talking about earlier that there's a natural curiosity going on with younger people. What are the, or is it also for crime, young people are very vulnerable?
I think that's part of it. You can have a protagonist who like Dani in the Rip, is on one level doing what people might consider bad things, but we feel protective over her at the same time because there is that vulnerability. Likewise for Jacob in the others, likewise for Ben and Fab in my first book, Wimmera. They were certainly very, very vulnerable in their situation in this small town with this kind of nefarious figure of Ronnie gravitating toward them. So I think that maybe it is my kind of protective instincts when I'm writing that I'll write these characters, but at the same time I put them in enormous peril as well. So there's something probably quite sadistic at work. But I want readers to care deeply about the characters, and I want them to feel like they're real. But I also want them to want the best for them and want things to work out as well.
Now, what about your reading? Can you, have you read any Australian books or crime books of late that you'd like to sort of talk about or mention? Is there one particular that stood out for you?
Yeah, I read one recently which is due out. It's not out yet. It's out in February. I think February. It's called The Cane by Mary Rose Cuskley. And Mary Rose Cuskley, her first book, I think it was her first book, was non-fiction, a book called Wedderburn, which was about a crime that happened in a small town in Western Victoria. And I really thought I read that book and thought she's a fantastic writer, and I was keen to pick up her first attempt at a novel, and it was exceptional.
Oh, wow.
I don't want to give away any spoilers, but it's set in a small town, as many Australian crime fiction stories are of late. Set in a small town in Queensland, and it's the cane fields, and it's not an area that I know well, so I found the setting, setting's interesting because I find it useful only to the extent that it works on the characters, and drives the story forward. And in the cane, the setting really looms over the story. The cane fields are such a part of their life, and how they have to do the burning off and all that sort of stuff is a real critical part of the story. So I was very impressed by it.
That's fantastic. What was the name of that again?
The Cane.
Now, Mark, here are my questions. Choose question.
Ooh.
Don't look.
Okay. Ooh,
Oh, landscape or dialogue?
I think I almost just answered that before, but I think landscape or dialogue. Dialogue is it for me, because dialogue is such an important tool for me as a writer, because what you can do with dialogue is show so much about the characters. As a reader, I look to dialogue to get that kind of deep insight about what the character's motivations really are. So you kind of, and you see when they're being kind of, I guess, untruthful in what they're saying. You see that kind of interplay between them, which is really important. So I always use dialogue. I use it sparingly, actually, in my writing, but for me it has to have a bit of grunt. It has to do a bit of the legwork for my stories. So certainly dialogue before landscape.
You can't think off the top of your head, it's a bit mean of me, who's a great dialogue writer? Who's a writer that does great dialogue?
Oh, I really like an American writer, Willie Vlaughton. And he writes a lot about characters kind of from the wrong side of the tracks. And I just love his dialogue. I love his characters first and foremost, and I think that's part of it. I love the dialogue almost as a consequence of loving the characters so much. But I think he does dialogue really, really cleverly. Again, uses it sparingly. I don't think you want pages and pages of kind of a back and forth, because it can be a bit disorienting for a reader, but also it just loses its impact.
Mark Brandi, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you.
Pleasure, Stella. Thanks for having me.
All right, I'll just do...